I dreamed of becoming a pilot. I prepared for it for 18 years, and finally the day of the final competition arrived. My girlfriend let me be operated on to have my kidney removed in order to protect her first love. Don't touch Xiao Yu. Take his kidney. They stabbed me with a knife. My dream was shattered, and I decided to cancel the wedding. But she stabbed her first love to beg me not to leave. Xiao Yu, come out. With the final competition approaching, a group of men blocked my way, and I was kicked down. I struggled but was stepped on, and the pain in my body made me roar. I have no grudges against you. The other side claimed that Xiao Yu owed gambling debts, and came to take my kidney to pay off the debt. I instinctively refuted. Su Moli pointed at me and said heartlessly, "Just take his kidney if you want to." My father asked me why I hadn't participated in the final yet. Su Moli rushed to answer, and then smashed the phone. This group of people stabbed me in the waist with a knife. Blood soaked my clothes, and I was shivering with pain. Seeing the wound, I was desperate. 18 years of preparation were ruined, and my dream of flying was shattered because of Su Moli. I endured the intense pain and pleaded, "Moli, why did you destroy my dream with your own hands?" But she didn't care. "You're a big man. You're making a fuss over a small wound. It's just a kidney. I left you one, didn't I? Consider this as you taking the blame for Xiao Yu." The wound was excruciatingly painful, but Su Moli's words were even more unbearable for me. I had been living with her day and night for 7 years, and was about to step into the marriage hall. She clearly knew that I had suffered a lot to become a pilot, but now she destroyed my dream with her own hands for the sake of Xiao Yu. Su Moli and Xiao Yu were snuggling together, watching me being hurt with a cold expression. I was tortured by these thugs beyond recognition, but she still thought I was pretending. I covered my bloody wound, and looked at her helplessly. Su Moli was taken aback, and seemed a bit moved. Just as she was about to speak, Xiao Yu beside her immediately pretended to be weak. "Moli, it's my fault. Chen Bin is a pilot, and is nobler than me. If I could do it all over again, I would definitely take this knife for him. You'd better go and save him quickly. Let me pay with my life." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Moli immediately comforted him softly. "You don't have to blame yourself. Chen Bin loves to help others. Besides, he didn't die. Even if he didn't have this scar, it's not certain that he could become a pilot." Ever since Xiao Yu came back, Su Moli has been focused on him. The number of our quarrels has also increased, and every time it's because of him. I kept making excuses for Su Moli. I thought maybe she was too affectionate. It was only now that I finally woke up. 6 years ago, I almost got injured during training. It was Su Moli who arrived in time, so I didn't have any scars. Her hand was broken because of it. Afraid that I would worry, she smiled and said, "Chen Bin, I'm fine. I just hope you can achieve your dream as soon as possible." Her encouragement and tolerance time and time again gave me more confidence. Later, she was worried about the company's funds. I asked my family's company to invest in her and help her out, but I didn't reveal this matter. That night, she came to me excitedly. "Chen Bin, my dream is about to come true. When you become a pilot, marry me." I was full of expectations for the future. Because of Xiao Yu's appearance, she distanced herself from me, and hung out with Xiao Yu every night. I blamed myself for making Su Moli wait too long and trained even harder to marry her earlier. I managed to make it to the final as I wished. Su Moli destroyed my years of hard work. I was just a substitute for Xiao Yu. I heard my father's anxious voice in my ear. I opened my eyes with difficulty, and found myself in the hospital. I hoped that Su Moli had brought me here, and wanted to see her immediately, but the wound brought me back to reality. My father was furious. Su Moli is heartless and Xiao Yu is a jerk. I won't let them go. I opened my mouth with difficulty. "Dad, forget it. I don't want to pursue it anymore." The door of the ward was kicked open. Su Moli said angrily, "Chen Bin, you want to send Xiao Yu to prison just because you got injured. It was someone else who hurt you. Xiao Yu is innocent. Do you want to force him to death?" After she said this to me resentfully, she turned around and comforted Xiao Yu gently. "Xiao Yu, don't worry. I won't let him get what he wants." I smiled bitterly in my heart. It's me whose dream was shattered, and it's me who got injured, but she still blames me. In the past, she was always the most concerned about my health, and was afraid that I would get injured. No matter how busy she was, she would find time to care about me. But now there is a lot of blood on the gauze on my body, but Su Moli doesn't say a word of concern. She only wants to stand up for her first love, and ignores my injury. I suppressed my disappointment and said in a low voice, "Why don't you always believe me? Is the injury I suffered for him fake? My wound still hurts. I don't have the energy or the intention to force anyone to death. I want to get a little care from her, even a little bit of guilt. After all, we were about to get married, and I thought she had me in her heart." But she snorted disdainfully and said, "You just got a little injury. It's not like you're missing an arm or a leg. Even without this incident, your skills may not be enough to become a pilot. If it weren't for the fact that you looked a bit like Xiao Yu in class, why would I have agreed to be with you? Do you really think you're so important? I looked at her in disbelief. So in your heart, I'm just a substitute for Zhao Yu? Su Moli shrugged indifferently. Otherwise? Don't you really think I was waiting for you to marry me? Her and Zhao Yu's cold laughter echoed in the room. Slap. Su Moli was slapped hard by my father, and she fell to the ground. The people who had hurt me before had already been locked up by my father. Now he had someone teach Su Moli and Zhao Yu a lesson. Su Moli was beaten black and blue, and Zhao Yu even had 2 of his teeth knocked out. I quickly tried my best to stop them. Dad, tell them to stop. Someone might die. Zhao Yu protected Su Moli with great distress. Moli, are you okay? It's all my fault. After that, he looked at me angrily. Chen Bin, don't you know that Moli is innocent? How could you be so heartless? She has been with you for so many years, and you actually let others be so cruel to her. Do you have any conscience? It was rare for Zhao Yu to stand up for Su Moli, but I just thought it was ridiculous. What right did they have to accuse me of having no conscience? I had put so much effort into Su Moli over the years. When she was sad, I would leave my training to accompany her. When there were problems with her company, I was the first to help her solve them. But she didn't take all of this seriously. At the most crucial moment of my life, she chose to protect her first love. She let me be deeply stabbed by a knife. Because of Su Moli's words, he's not important. I got into this unprovoked disaster. I originally had the opportunity to achieve my dream, but she made all my efforts go to waste. Now they are accusing me of having no conscience. Su Moli slowly stood up and looked at me viciously. Chinbin, are you satisfied? We're also injured now. I can let go of what they did to me, but I can't tolerate them doing something to Zhao Yu. I want you to kneel down and apologize to Zhao Yu now and beg for his forgiveness. Otherwise you'll regret it. Don't forget, you are still begging me to marry you. If you don't apologize, I'll cancel the engagement immediately. After Su Moli said this, there was still a trace of pride on her face. She thought this was the only way to control me. Before, because she wanted to celebrate her birthday with Zhao Yu, and I didn't agree, she packed her things and said she was leaving me. Su Moli could always say the cruelest words to me. Chinbin, we're not married yet. Do you think you can control me just like that? Believe it or not, I'll cancel the engagement. Over the years, every time she got angry, she would threaten to cancel the engagement. I was afraid of losing her, so I would immediately compromise and beg for her forgiveness. This time, she threatened me with canceling the engagement as usual. I stared at Su Moli in front of me, feeling only a sense of strangeness. She stepped forward and pressed her hand hard on my wound, saying viciously, Chinbin, I'm talking to you. Don't think you can get away with this by not saying anything. I won't let this go easily regarding what your father did by making them take action. This matter started because of you. If you don't want me to cancel the engagement, you must kneel down and apologize to Zhao Yu now. I took a deep breath and looked at her calmly saying, then as you wish, cancel the engagement. When Su Moli heard what I said, she immediately widened her eyes, looking utterly disbelieving. Chinbin, what did you say? I took a step back and spoke again. Su Moli, let's break up. As soon as I finished speaking, Su Moli punched me in the wound. Are you sure? Hearing this, I endured the pain and said firmly, I'm sure. You and Zhao Yu are quite a match. I wish you both happiness. Su Moli looked at my resolute expression, with tears welling up in her eyes, and her stubborn look still lingering. Chinbin, you'll regret it. You can't live without me. Her voice trembled slightly as she tried to make a final struggle. I just looked at her quietly, and the love in my heart had turned into a dead silence. I think I've regretted it too many times. This time I won't. After saying that, I turned around. Su Moli left in a daze, and Zhao Yu followed closely behind, constantly comforting her. Looking at their receding figures, my father sighed. Son, your decision is right. Such a woman isn't worth your further efforts. I nodded. The bitterness in my heart spread like a tide. As the days passed, I tried my best to recover and get back to life. The pain of losing my dream, and the trauma of being betrayed haunted me like a shadow, torturing me. I closed myself off, and the room became both a haven and a cage. I stared blankly at the photo of Su Moli and me all day long. The photo was like a sword stabbing at my heart. The beautiful memories turned into a deadly poison, eroding my soul. During those dark days I met Zhao Yuan. One afternoon, I was wandering in the park like a lost soul. Zhao Yuan was sketching by the lake, with a focused expression, as if she were isolated from the world. A gust of wind blew, and her painting tools were scattered on the ground. I instinctively helped pick them up. Thank you. She looked up, her eyes shining brightly. You're welcome. I replied in a low voice, and was about to turn around and leave. You look really unhappy. Her words made me stop in my tracks. I gave a bitter smile and didn't answer. Since then we often met in the park. I poured out my heart to her, telling her about my past and the disaster I had suffered. Zhao Yuan listened quietly, her eyes full of sympathy and tenderness. She said seriously, Chinbin, you can't let the past hold you back. I said, I I don't know how to start over anymore. Zhao Yuan gently took my hand and said, I'll be with you. I felt the long-lost warmth and stopped thinking about Su Moli. When I went to the hospital to remove the gauze, I happened to meet Zhao Yuan. She was a bit shocked. What a coincidence, Chin Bin. I asked, why are you in the hospital? Zhao Yuan said, I just have a slight cold. Zhao Yuan said, it's my birthday today. Can you have a meal with me? I replied, okay. After leaving the hospital we went to the mall, and I picked a necklace for Zhao Yuan. Unexpectedly we ran into Su Moli, and she had a provocative look on her face. Su Moli said, what? Do you regret it, and deliberately came to run into me? I said, you're overthinking it. I'm unlucky to have met you. Su Moli said, if you don't apologize I'll break up with you. I turned around, looked at her and blurted out, Su Moli, we've already broken up. Even now she's still waiting for my apology. It's really ridiculous. After saying that without waiting for her response, I prepared to leave. She rushed up and hugged me. Chenbin, don't break up. Believe me, the person I like is you. There's nothing between me and Zhao Yu. Besides, his company is now on the verge of bankruptcy. He can't give me a good life. Chenbin, I just want to be with you. Hearing these words I sneered inwardly. I forcefully broke free from her hand without showing any mercy. Su Moli, it's over between us. Let's not meet again. Please don't bother me. When I arrived at the restaurant, Zhao Yuan was already there. Looking at me, she was all smiles. I sat down and handed her the gift. Do you like it? Zhao Yuan immediately took the gift and put it on right away. I like it, of course I do. I like anything you give me. If you could be my boyfriend, that would be even better. As soon as she said this, the surroundings suddenly became much quieter. Finally, Zhao Yuan spoke first. I'm just kidding. Don't take it to heart. I took a deep breath and slowly said, Zhao Yuan, would you like to be my girlfriend? As soon as I finished speaking, Zhao Yuan stood up and kissed the corner of my mouth. Okay. I thought the matter between me and Su Moli was over. But I didn't expect that she would come directly to my house. She looked haggard with messy hair and eyes full of fatigue and despair. Chenbin, I was wrong. I was really wrong. As soon as she saw me, she started crying. Zhao Yu is not a good person. He cheated all my money and still owes a huge debt outside. I looked at the disheartened Su Moli, and my heart was as cold as ice without any ripple. This has nothing to do with me. It's your own choice. My voice was calm and indifferent. Su Moli knelt down with a thud and grabbed the hem of my clothes, sobbing and begging me for help. I can't lose my company. It's everything to me. Her eyes were filled with desperate pleading. I looked down at her coldly, and the bitterness in my heart surged like a tide. I asked what I meant to her. Su Moli was at a loss for words, and just kept crying with her tears smudging her makeup. I turned around, and was about to go back inside, not wanting to be entangled anymore. At this moment, Zhao Yuan came out and brought a cup of hot tea. When Su Moli saw Zhao Yuan, anger and surprise flashed in her eyes, and she found an outlet to vent her emotions and shouted at me. I frowned impatiently, and said that this was a matter between me and her, and had nothing to do with Zhao Yuan. Su Moli didn't listen to the explanation. She walked up to Zhao Yuan, and stared at her viciously, asking questions. Zhao Yuan gently tugged at my arm and said timidly, Chenbin, I'll go back first. You two talk it out. I gently patted her hand to signal her not to worry. When Su Moli saw the subtle movement, she became even angrier, and tried to reach out and grab Zhao Yuan. I quickly stepped in between them. Su Moli, that's enough. You no longer have the right to interfere in my life. I shouted at her. Su Moli's body trembled slightly, and her eyes were full of resentment. Chenbin, how could you treat me like this? I know I was wrong, but you can't bring someone else home so soon. Su Moli said. I took a deep breath and tried my best to suppress my anger. Su Moli, it's all over since you betrayed me and chose Zhao Yu. Zhao Yuan was just there for me when I was at my most painful. She didn't do anything wrong. Su Moli sneered. There for you? I think you two have been together for a long time already. I shook my head in frustration, not wanting to argue anymore. Su Moli suddenly fell silent with an empty and desperate look in her eyes, muttering to herself. I've really lost you. I've messed everything up. I looked at her feeling mixed emotions. The woman I once loved deeply had become strange and crazy. Su Moli slowly squatted down, hugged her head with both hands and burst into tears. I stood there quietly watching her. There was no pity in my heart, only deep sorrow. After a long time, Su Moli's crying gradually stopped. She raised her head and there was a trace of determination in her eyes. Chenbin, you will regret it. My heart tightened, and I felt a sense of unease from her eyes. I didn't know what extreme thing she would do, but I wouldn't turn back. I watched her turn and walk away, vowing to have a good future with Zhao Yuan. I faintly worried about Su Moli's future, and didn't want her to completely go to ruin. A few days later in the evening, I heard a rapid knock on the door at home. When I opened the door, Su Moli was standing at the door looking haggard with messy hair. There was madness and despair in her eyes, her hands hidden behind her back, and her body was trembling. Before I could say anything, she slowly stretched out the hands that had been hidden behind her back. I felt a moment of dizziness, Zhao Yu's organs were presented and blood kept dripping. My heart clenched violently in shock, and fear welled up in my heart. Su Moli, what are you doing? My voice trembled. Su Moli looked at me coldly, and a twisted smile played on her lips as she said those words. Her voice was hoarse and cold as if it came from hell. I tried my best to suppress my discomfort and fear, and managed to calm myself down. Su Moli, are you crazy? Seeing that she didn't respond, I continued to ask. Where is Zhao Yu? Is he still alive? I just wanted to find him, and get him medical treatment as soon as possible. Su Moli laughed softly, and her laughter was particularly eerie in the evening. Why do you care about him? You should only care about me now, shouldn't you? I didn't have time to entangle with her and shouted anxiously. Su Moli, tell me where Zhao Yu is. I had never expected things to turn out like this, and my heart was filled with panic and anger. She looked at my anxious expression, and a trace of hesitation flashed in her eyes, which was quickly replaced by madness. You care about him so much? Then go find him. I was extremely anxious, took out my phone, and was about to call the emergency number trying to ask about Zhao Yu's whereabouts. Su Moli, this is a crime. Do you know how serious the consequences are? If you still want a chance at redemption, tell me where he is. Su Moli's body trembled violently, as if she realized the seriousness of the matter. In the basement of my house. Her voice was trembling with fear. I quickly called the emergency number, explained the situation, and the address, and rushed to her house. I found Zhao Yu in the basement. He was unconscious due to excessive blood loss, and his face was as pale as paper. I carefully picked him up, and rushed out the door waiting for the ambulance to arrive. Zhao Yu was taken to the hospital, and Su Moli was taken away by the police. I rushed to the hospital, and saw Zhao Yu moaning in pain on the hospital bed. I felt mixed emotions. When he saw me, his eyes were full of hatred and he said, Chunbin, this is all your fault. I didn't respond to his accusation, and left the hospital silently. I went to the police station, and saw Su Moli in the detention room with empty eyes and disheveled hair. When she saw me, a glimmer of light flashed in her eyes and she said, Chunbin, I did it. I avenged you. I looked at her filled with sorrow in my heart and said, This is not revenge. You've destroyed yourself. Su Moli cried and said, I thought you would forgive me and come back to me if I did this. I sighed and said, Since you betrayed me, we can never go back to the way we were. Su Moli was stunned and said, Are you really so heartless? I replied, You never cherished me. After I finished speaking, I turned around and left the police station. This incident caused a great stir locally. Su Moli faced serious legal sanctions, and Zhao Yu isolated himself. In the midst of the turmoil, I tried hard to find redemption, and began to try to get in touch with airplanes again. Although I wasn't as flexible as before with my love and perseverance, I slowly regained the feeling I used to have. Engaging in work related to airplanes, I felt much more at ease in my heart. After work, I went to the trial scene of Su Moli. In the court, Su Moli was wearing shabby clothes with a pale face and eyes full of fear and regret. Her lawyer made a final defense for her, claiming that she was mentally deranged at that time and lost her mind because of Zhao Yu's deception. The prosecutor responded that her behavior violated the law and caused irreparable harm to the victim. The judge sentenced Su Moli to several years in prison. Her body trembled, she closed her eyes in despair, and tears rolled down her cheeks. When she was taken out of the court and saw me, her eyes were full of regret and reluctance. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but only shed silent tears. I watched her receding figure in silence, feeling nothing in my heart. When I got home, I found my father sitting in the living room looking at me with a worried expression and asking softly. I smiled and said I was okay and told my father that I had a girlfriend named Zhao Yuan. My father was relieved. After Su Moli was imprisoned, I tried to make my life fulfilling, participated in airplane training and competitions, and made new friends. One day I received a letter from Su Moli sent from prison. I was a bit puzzled but still opened it. The letter read, Chunbin, when you see this letter, I have already spent a long time in prison. I reflect on my mistakes every day. I know I was terribly wrong. I destroyed your dream, and also ruined my own life. I regret not cherishing you. I hope you can forgive me, even though I know it's almost impossible. Perhaps Su Moli really knew she was wrong, but there's no possibility for her and me anymore. After reading the letter, I went out of the house and came to the racetrack. I started the racing car and sped on the track. The wind whistled in my ears, and I seemed to feel a sense of liberation. I know I have to let go of the past and face the future bravely. A few months later, I achieved good results in an important flying competition. When I stood on the podium and looked at the cheering crowd below, there was a trace of loneliness in my heart. I know that no matter how many achievements I make, the void in my heart can never be filled. At this moment, my phone suddenly rang. It was a strange number. I hesitated for a moment but still answered it. A familiar voice came from the other end of the phone. Chunbin, it's me, Su Moli. I was shocked. Why are you calling me? Su Moli cried on the phone. I heard in prison that you won an award in the competition. I'm really happy for you. I know I'm not qualified to bother you anymore, but I just couldn't help wanting to hear your voice. I was silent for a moment. Thank you for your blessing. Don't say anything else. Junbin, I really regret it. I think every day about what our lives would be like if I hadn't been bewitched by Zhao Yu back then. Su Moli's voice was full of regret. There are no ifs. Everything has already happened. After I finished speaking, I hung up the phone. I devoted more energy to my career and kept challenging myself. I broke through my own limits. I know that the story between her and me has come to a complete end. 242. We will go on different life paths. The end.